Alleghany County School Board approved sports competition this last Monday, and that's a really big deal. What does that mean now? What does it mean in terms of schedule? And of course, it just changes the whole dynamic around here, doesn't it?
Sure, it's a peace of mind. That commitment has been pretty great. Luckily, I've had plenty of time to prepare for a potential season. So, now that they gave us the green light, I can go ahead and call all those ADs, and my coaches can let the other coaches know, hey, we're on, we're ready to compete, we're ready to play.
How do you do schedules? I mean, you're going to have to work on this pretty quickly to get anything confirmed.
Yeah, well, so the ADs I've worked with have been incredible. Everyone's been flexible. When I call an AD, they're kind of 80% expecting some bad news. So anytime I have something positive to share with them, it's it's a much more pleasant conversation. But ADs have been great to work with. The principals have been great to work with. TRD has been very transparent, very open, frequent meetings. It's been pretty easy now that we've gotten used to. This is probably on my fifth schedule that I've made for this year. So each time you do it, it gets a little bit easier.
How in the world did you keep morale up during this uncertain period?
I don't even think it was me. I think it was my coaches. My coaches had a lot of confidence, a lot of faith, and they kind of projected it onto the players. And the players wanted to be here. So even knowing that there's a chance they didn't get to compete, I still had 45, 50 football players show up to condition over the summer and through season one, despite my basketball players not being able to compete.
And all along the way, the kids, to the extent that they could, were lifting weights. We're in your newly refurbished weight room, which is, by the way, for you parents who haven't seen it, or citizens in general, you should see this facility. It's really, as we were joking, maybe Virginia Tech would be envious. But so you've been practicing and conditioning along the way. What kind of strictures will there be in place during this period where COVID-19 hasn't disappeared?
No, it hasn't. And because of that, my players and my coaches realize it's still a fragile environment. The biggest thing is they don't want to do anything that's going to prevent their other teammates from being able to play. So my players are making good decisions. My coaches are organizing their practices to where there aren't going to be issues. And the rest is out of our hands. But for what we can control, we're making sure that we err on the side of caution and err on the side of the kids playing.
So in terms of schedules, I guess as soon as you can get them together, all of us can publish them. But with respect to that, that's about the competition. Will the public be able to come to some of these games, or to what extent?
Sure. So, that changed just Wednesday, and it's probably going to change again before our first competition.
It may have changed today.
It probably has, yeah. For inside competition, so for volleyball, everything's the same as it was for basketball. We get 25 people total. I'm working with my coaches and my administrators to find out how we're going to divvy that out, but very similar to a basketball scenario. Outside's a different story. Outside our limit's 250. So you've got football players, you've got band, and you've got cheer. And band and cheer, technically they count as spectators, which is crazy to me, but that's above me. So I'm trying to find a way to make all three of these groups happy. My football players get exactly what they want, and they at least get to travel with their 2 tickets per player. So that was a TRD decision and a VHSL decision, and it's been a top-down decision. So the question is, what do we do with the remaining tickets?
Well, Jared Brown is supposed to be athletic director, but now you've got an additional role, not just as assistant principal, but it's now Jared Brown juggler.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a lot of wrong answers, but not a lot of right ones. And so it's not a lot of, it's not me deciding which group I'm going to make happy, but it's more of me focusing on which group isn't going to be happy with this decision, and can I justify and explain to them why it has to be that way. And it's not ideal, but I want everyone to realize that it's a top-down scenario starting in the governor's office and trickling its way down. So a lot of these decisions are well out of my hands.
Well, the decision by the school board occurred this past Monday. Was there a noticeable change in attitude and excitement shortly after that?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think I got off the phone until midnight that night. Just coaches calling me and parents calling and texting. And the enthusiasm was incredible. I had kids come up and talk to me, just showing appreciation, and just glad that we have a little bit of hope now.
Well, your appearance before the school board, I guess it was last month, was respectful. It was very thorough, and I wonder to what extent that had to do with getting the approval, but it certainly didn't do any harm. And we wondered, how did the staff and administration feel about this little protest? Well, it wasn't a little, a substantial protest by the kids who just said, let us play.
Sure. It was done tastefully. My students handled it well. My coaches handled it well. My coaches balanced supporting their athletes, but at the same time supporting the school board. And the school board members, they made a decision based on their logic. It wasn't a decision that I think they took lightly. So I think that my students handled it the right way. They showed that they weren't happy with the decision, but at the same time, they weren't being disrespectful. The school board has had a lot of eyes on them lately, and I'm appreciative of the decision they made, but I also recognize the reason they made decisions to not play earlier.
Okay.
Pre-COVID, I was asking the school board for maybe $18,000-$19,000 just to get the new racks, and then after that didn't happen, I kind of used this as a reason to reach out to the community. Like, look, hey, there's one project that touches every single one of my athletes.
And you got a tremendous response.
Oh, it was incredible.
And so the kids are even they're starting in 9th grade weightlifting, or is it before?
6th, 7th grade, yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh, my middle school football team is in here all the time. And I love, I said, it's funny. A lot of my athletes, especially those middle schoolers, they love putting on these little 5-pound plastic weights that look like the big 45-pounders.
You got to start somewhere.
It makes them feel good, yeah, and it's a confidence
Is that
booster.
the girls as well?
Yeah,
Sure.
all across the board. But having the smaller bars to where it's not quite as intimidating for a kid to step in means they get to start a little bit earlier. Because when I can have a female athlete deadlifting 50 pounds and it looks the same as my senior lineman who's deadlifting 300 or 400 pounds.
So for those of us that don't know anything about this kind of conditioning, does it take a year or two to develop what you would consider a competence in conditioning for an individual to make a substantial difference in their performance?
Oh, absolutely. And because of the way this weight room is set up, we have an emphasis on functional fitness. And a lot of this functional fitness isn't weight dependent, but it's more technique dependent. And because we have so much to choose from for our athletes, they can work on that technique early and they can perfect it. So when it is time to start adding some muscle, and when their hormones catch up to, their metabolism catches up to where they're at going from middle school to high school, and they start adding that weight, they already have that foundation of good technique so they don't get injured.
And what do you say to the people who, like Tom Brady, they're really not been, he says, I don't lift weights. My key goal is to remain flexible. How valid is that?
All right, so there's always a pendulum shift. Yeah, education, athletics, there's always a pendulum shift. And it used to be the more I squat, the more I bench press, the more I deadlift, the better athlete I'm going to be. And that's true to some extent, but you have to respect the flexibility part of it. And it's not just, if I'm strong on an isolated movement, that's not as impressive as me being strong on a compound movement that actually translates to what my athlete's going to do on the football field or on the volleyball court. So those compound lifts where the student is doing game-like activities is more impressive than just an isolated movement.
And is this connected in any way to a decrease in injuries in sports activity when you're stronger, more flexible, you've been better conditioned.
Absolutely, and it's an emphasis on on the antagonist muscle. If you look at an athlete, they're always doing everything in front of them, typing on their computer, texting on their phone, driving. Everything is in front of them, and because of that, a lot of times their front delts are a little bit more developed than their rear delts, which isn't an issue unless you're a baseball player that's getting ready to pitch. So because of this emphasis on functional fitness, we can start focusing on the muscles that aren't used all the time, but the muscles that are responsible for stabilizing the main muscles that we do use.
And each athlete has some kind of a program that they begin to follow at some point?
Absolutely. So all of my coaches have an out-of-season program and an in-season program. So they're still getting that lifting, still getting that conditioning. Just in season, we're not fatiguing our muscles before competition.
So it's a school year full program.
It is, yes, and my coaches have definitely committed to this weight room. I like I've got a Google sheet that they sign up for time slots, and I always like, when I have little conversations back and forth, if I signed up first, or I like that they're fighting over this space. That's how it should be.
Well, Jared, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Absolutely, thank you.